and good morning. I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for joining us. We'll give you some truth for our time, and we'll help you live God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. Joining me in studio today is Drew Klein. And Drew, I thank you for being here with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm trying to get a tweet out about it.
I appreciate that. Since I know you're more techie than I am, I appreciate you getting it out. I didn't get one out this morning. But as you know, we come to you every Wednesday morning at 10 a.m., and you can call or email your friends and have them tune in as well at webcast1live.com. Webcast1, the number 1 is spelled out, live.com. And they can follow along there. You can chat to us live, or you can phone in your questions at any point and any time, or your comments as well. 855-244-0077, 855-244-0077. Well, we had an interesting evening. It was an election, an off-year election, and maybe just an off election, depending on how you look at it. I did something different yesterday. I live in a rural area. And so because I'm not in city limits, I don't get a vote in these elections. And it just seemed really odd to me yesterday. It seemed really odd that even though I don't live in city limits, I'm still impacted by the levies, the tax rates, the decisions that my city council members will make. And so I went to the poll and I filled out my sheet, and I just stood there to see if I had a ballot of any sort. Because sometimes there's, in my rural area, cemetery trustees or water board nominees, or sometimes, usually the superintendent races are on the even years. But I just thought I'd try. And sure enough, they said, you have nothing to vote on. It just seemed so odd to me. It just seemed really odd that while my friends and my fellow citizens are getting to vote, I'm really, in essence, being taxed without representation.
Well, it's certainly one of the trade-offs. I mean, you do get to enjoy a slightly lower property tax levy.
Slightly. Trust me, slightly. and that was the trade-off when I used to sit in the city council meetings years ago when I wrote for the local paper. I would follow them, and they would debate on whether to charge those of us outside for an ambulance, should we call it, or to charge us extra to go to the pool because we don't live inside city limits. And my thought was I lived outside because that ambulance is going to take twice as long to get to me. The fire trucks, I'm going to be putting out ashes. So I figured that was my trade-off. I didn't figure it was having my voice removed as they jacked my taxes.
Certainly.
So, Drew, what did you think about the election?
There's not a whole lot that I've found yet to be excited about. I didn't see the final results down in Alabama, but it looked like those were going to be promising, and I think there are certainly some lessons that we are going to be able to learn in Virginia, and I guess I don't know what to think about New Jersey, but I suppose they still have a Republican-ish governor.
Yeah, that one, and I've already seen the spin. Republicans are saying how much they gave to
Cuccinelli
versus a lesser amount that they supposedly gave to Christie. I think Virginians will be ever so sad. I can't imagine living in Virginia today and seeing the Clinton regime relived.
Yeah, it's really odd when you see a coalition of sitting Republican congressmen and Hillary Clinton campaigning for the same candidate in Virginia, and that's what we saw with McAuliffe. So that's certainly interesting. It appears that it's a race that could have been won. And to be quite honest, I think Cuccinelli made a lot of mistakes, took a lot of bad advice throughout. But you look at the last, really close to the last month of the campaign out in Virginia, and we saw a guy that was, speaking the language of conservatism, that was that rightly made this that election in many ways a referendum on Obamacare, and I think that's where a lot of that energy came from. Now, if he would have been that guy the entire way through the campaign, I think we would have seen things change. But I think there's also a pretty thick storyline to read about the establishment backing away and shying away from a candidate that they viewed as being too conservative.
And we saw that in 2012. with Aiken.
Certainly. Yeah, and you know, I think there are obviously some differences between that. I mean, to my knowledge, we don't have any of the supposed blunders out of Cuccinelli that Aiken had, but again, the establishment was so quick to throw him under the bus. No even really attempt to get back on message or to change the conversation. It was just instantly they were done with him, and in many ways, you know, threw away a state that I think probably could have been won. Now, that's not to comment over. I don't know Aiken personally, so I don't know how great of a candidate he was or not. But he certainly, you know, took a nosedive after that comment and the subsequent reaction out of many in the political class.
But I'll still say the difference is Democrats circle their wagons and Republicans draw their bows.
Indeed.
All right, and Drew is with Americans for Prosperity, which is a great group economically, giving us information, keeping us abreast of things that we need to be aware of. Now, just recently, you guys participated and held a forum.
Yes.
Was that with National Review?
Yeah, we held the first debate here in Iowa for the Senate, the primary amongst the Republican candidates running for U.S. Senate here in Iowa. That was an event co-sponsored between the state chapter of AFB Iowa here and then the National Review as well.
And in reflections, I thought it was a great event.
Yeah.
I thought it was run well. I thought it was interesting to see the candidates. We didn't know if we were watching, those of us in the audience, would they start kind of going against each other? They didn't. They were all, which I appreciated, frankly. Give me your strengths rather than your opponent's weaknesses.
Right.
And I thought they all did a nice job. I thought they all had individuality that came and was shown, and then they all, and I'm not sure if I'll remember it right now, but they all had a humorous line, some point in it.
Some intended, some unintended, but yes. Yeah, and I think it was good also in the sense that you know, we have you know, many people commenting on the state of the Senate race here in Iowa, and we're a nonpartisan organization. We're not you know, we're not in the business of endorsing candidates, but we have you know, on the left in this race, we have an extremely liberal individual running who has essentially been you know, coronated by the Democratic Party to be their candidate, and that's Bruce Braley, an individual that on our scorecard has a worse voting record than Nancy Pelosi, and at the same time, there really hasn't been any energy on the right or any optimism as to how you go about you know, raising awareness about those issues and gaining some traction and stopping that agenda as well. And so I think it was good in the sense that there was obviously a lot of earned media that came with that, a lot of press coverage, and quite honestly, you know, we're not that far away from June 14th in the primary. You know, some of these people need to start being vetted themselves as well. And so we didn't get a lot of that done. There were not, I don't think, a lot of sharp contrasts drawn, but certainly I think it was a good opportunity for people to talk about who they are and you know, what their vision would be as a U.S. Senator. And hopefully, you know, there'll be a little bit more energy, and we can kind of view that as the kickoff of the actual Senate race. I would really enjoy that.
And, you know, I don't think it's that we're not rallying behind someone or that we're not pleased with the field. I think that Iowans are conservative. We've learned from being the first in the nation state that you hold back and you reserve until you're quite certain. Iowans are good on their word, and so they don't want to step out and then shift in most cases. And so unlike the other side, here's the difference. We don't just take the hand-me-downs that from the top.
Right.
We actually have a selection and a bench and some bright ideas.
Yeah, well, and furthermore, we want our candidates to earn our support as well. And so, you know, there's not, you know, as soon as somebody announces that they're running, there's not just a massive, you know, bull rush to that individual because he's, you know, the newest candidate or she's the newest candidate or whatever. I mean, we certainly see that, you know, the endorsement of you know, the supposed establishment doesn't really carry a lot of weight here. In fact, the endorsements that seem to matter the most are grassroots leaders, people who have earned the trust of their fellow Iowans and their fellow conservatives by being on the ground working shoulder to shoulder with those individuals.
You know, that's a great point. And sometimes those endorsements may even hurt a candidate because we're not exactly sure then where their true compass lies.
Yeah.
And one of the helpers in one of the campaign, I said something about money. Is money going to be an issue for your candidate? And he just laughed and looked at me and said, Tamara, I've never had money. I've never worked on a campaign that had money. And yet he's been successful several different times. So it'll be interesting to see how it lays out. On the Virginia, I see on my computer, Susan B. Anthony, a pro-life organization, said Virginia's results show urgent need to expose Democratic extremism on abortion. That McCullough spent well over $5 million on false war on women attack ads. And this is frustrating. Until the voters decide to really vet candidates, as you say, and really understand the issues, I don't know how you get through to people.
Yeah, I mean, there certainly has to be a cultural shift in politics away from kind of the sloganeering and the catchphrasing and so forth. And you know, to be quite honest, the right has done a very poor job of being able to combat the labels that are placed on us. I mean, you look at, and again, I work with Americans for Prosperity. We do economics, but if you look just at this, you know, the label of the war on women that we've seen from the left, you know, let's compare, you know, visions for women, you know, on the right versus on the left. If we look at Texas, where they've passed a law that, quite frankly, the end result of that law is to protect women from poor medical practices across the board. The left says that, you know, and the agenda that they're pushing for is really a third world medical climate for abortions, and the results on women have been detrimental. I mean, you look at Gosnell and the stuff that was going on there. I mean, let's be honest, that is really where we're getting to. The only place that the left is pushing for less regulation is in the abortion industry. Everything else they'd like to regulate to death. But
and choice. We're all about choice, except that one.
Yeah, but in the abortion industry, it's okay if you, you know, if your office hasn't seen a mop in 4 years, and there are women that are leaving with infections and some of them dying, but we're the individuals that are waging a war on women.
And you brought up Texas, and a federal appeals court just reinstated the new abortion law regulations in Texas that will require abortionists to have admitting privileges, limit the use of abortion-inducing drugs. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans ordered a stay of district court opinion, which will enable the new regulations to go into effect while the case is argued. These are common sense regulations that protect women and unborn children, like you're talking about, just simple cleanliness, simple health gear.
Access to professionals that would be able to take care of an emergency if one arose.
And Ryan, and my thanks to Ryan. Ryan is the guru behind the glass that makes this show work. But Ryan, I don't know if you have that picture of the hand with the baby models in it. This is what happened in Iowa yesterday. Not as good, not as positive news as the Texas decision. But November 5th, that morning, Judge Karen Romano announced that at the request of Planned Parenthood, of the Heartland, she would place a motion for stay pending on judicial review on the recent decision on the Iowa Board of Medicine to end the dangerous webcam abortions in our state. So she's saying we're going to put an end on that. We're going to put a stay on that so they can continue doing them.
Yes, well, yeah, so they can tie it up in the courts, and that Planned Parenthood could continue to rake in profits off of a procedure that allows a doctor to Skype in from a remote location to perform a medical abortion.
Jen Bowen, the director of the Our Right to Life organization, said Planned Parenthood of the Heartland has women talk to a doctor only by webcam, sends them home for excruciating pain and bleeding, sometimes up to 2 weeks, more in the end, having to see and deal with the body of their dead baby. At 9 weeks, that baby's heart has been beating since 18 days after conception. It's about 2 inches long and simply needs time to grow. This matters because women will be left alone to deal with their dead babies. And Ryan had that photo up there 2 inches, you can see the size of the one baby. Everything is intact. It's not mature, but everything is intact by this point. And let's understand what we're talking about here. And I did not know we were going to get into this today, but basically what you're wanting is that choice, that option to kill another human being. And I just don't understand why we want to argue that. And I hear it's the woman has a right to do with her body what she wants. I get that, but we tell women what to do with their bodies every day when we put them in seat belts, when we tell them they can't strangle their toddler.
Well, now we've even gone as far at a federal level to tell them what kind of insurance they can and can't have.
You had to go there. You had to go there. All right, so that's what's happening in Iowa. In the Obama case, let's talk about that. For young people are going to be impacted a great deal by Obamacare. And these young folks who are trying to start a family, as you know, house payments, children, whatever, school debts, huge school debts you're
this
paying
generation now has the largest largest amounts of debt from education of any other generation as well. Yeah, and on top of that, now we're going to tack insurance premiums that are 200, 300, 400% of what they were 5 years ago.
Concerned Women for America, the largest women's public policy organization, says that 2.7 million aged people between 18 and 35, so-called young invincibles, will be crucial because they'll be paying for everyone else that's forced into this pool. You know, I'm not a genius, but when they were talking about this 20 years ago, I saw the danger of this. If you don't live healthily, if you choose to live a risky behavior, a lifestyle that creates issues for you, why would we force everybody else to be in that pool to lessen your burden? But that's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and the reason that they had to do this, obviously, is because with the massive cuts to Medicare and all of the other individuals that they're inviting on, where we're essentially providing a product, but we're not giving them any real ownership or any real accountability with that product. Somebody has to pay the bill on that. And so generally, my generation has the lowest healthcare costs. And so, we're a prime class of individuals to help pay for everybody else's increasing medical costs as well. But I think that the other side to look at this, and I have a friend that's an actuary here in Des Moines, and why the insurance industry is built on you paying consistently throughout the throughout your ownership of this plan, so that in the case that something does happen, those other premiums are offsetting your costs. Well, with the elimination of pre-existing conditions and so forth, if I'm a young person especially, and my penalty is going to be less than what I would be paying in annual premiums and so forth, why wouldn't I just wait till my arm broke? Why wouldn't I just wait until something terrible happened?
Wait till you've gotten the diagnosis.
And then I'll walk into call the insurance agent on my way to the hospital. Hey, I need you to go ahead and write me a plan. I'm headed to the hospital.
That's exactly what it is.
And listen, 6 weeks later, when my bone is now healed, I'm going to drop that plan because it doesn't make any sense for me to carry on that coverage until something dramatic happens again. It's just an unsustainable plan. There was very little foresight. There was very little critical thinking about how this is going to work because they had to ram it through so quickly.
And the more coverage you need, it will cost more than you can afford, and you'll pay a tax for not buying the government-approved plan. That and most of these young kids are figuring out it's cheaper to pay the penalty. Not just young kids. I mean, folks my age who were promised, and we should have had those. I think it was Hannity yesterday had the clips over and over again of Obama saying, if you like your doctor, you can stay with him. If you like your plan, you can keep it. And we now know that he knew that was not true when he was saying that.
I think there are going to be a lot of Americans that wish that were true because as their doctor retires, they'd like to retire as well.
Well, you won't be able to keep. I mean, people in Iowa are getting notices that your plan will no longer be available.
Yeah.
So promise him anything you want and then say it's not your fault because that plan's no longer available. But he knew that was going to happen. And most of us in business were saying that's going to happen. It won't sustain itself. So you have people who are going to pay a fine rather than buy insurance that they don't want. That's too expensive for what they can afford or what it will cover. Drew, to me, that is the old-fashioned serf, paying the king just to exist.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think, there's been a lot of misinformation about how cheap those fines are going to be. I don't think that the fines are cheap, but they're still going to make more sense for people my generation. It's still going to probably make more financial sense for them to pay that fine than it is for them to buy a plan. But I think you're absolutely right. We're at a point now where you are essentially paying the government for your daily activity of breathing.
At least 3.7 million of those 18 to 34 will be $500 better off if they forego the insurance and pay the penalty. More than 3 million will be $1,000 better off if they go the same route. I can't always remember what I read, but sometimes things stick to you. And when we were dealing with this pre the 2012 election, and I can't remember what source it came from, so forgive me for that, but they were saying the average home, some of those homes would pay up to $12,000 in fines. That's going to wipe out most families.
Yep.
So your home, most people won't be able to pay their insurance and keep their home. So is that going to be the government's way of taking back over property as well and making us renters rather than owners? I don't know, and I don't care to see it, frankly. And I disagree. There are some that saying it's here to stay and there's not a thing we can do about it. I don't buy that.
Yeah, I think that there are going to have to be some dramatic reforms because let's just say we get to the point where people are making a decision between paying their rent, keeping their house, and paying the penalties to the federal government. Is the IRS literally going to march in and drag people out of their homes to seize their homes because they haven't paid penalties? I would like to believe that we're not getting to that point. And so, when it comes to a point where there are, billions of dollars in outstanding fines because of this law alone, at some point I think the government is going to have to revisit this, regardless of who's in control. And at the same time, you look at how unpopular this law has remained. It's bound to have electoral consequences, hopefully sooner rather than later.
But only if people will get out, get involved, and go to the polls and make a difference. Your elections have consequences, and I'm not sure we're going to like the consequences of some of these elections we saw last night. We've got to go to break. I am Tamara Scott. We're here with you live on webcast1live.com, and we'll be back right after these messages. Stay tuned. We're going to talk with Mike Cook out of Nevada. Mike is active in the Common Core battle, and they've had some good things happening out there. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device, your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom. Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hi, I'm Doc. You listen to me every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. on Doc and Lefty radio podcast program, where we discuss all the relevant topics of the day, including state, local, and national politics. My partner in crime, Lefty, often likes to have a little bit of conservative justice served upon him, so please turn in for the fireworks every week from 6 to 7 p.m. on Tuesdays at webcast1live.com. Thank you.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. There's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
And I'm reading the comments as we're on break, and thank you for those of you who are participating on the chat line. And one of our followers wanted us to talk, Drew, about the fact that, well, first off, health savings accounts. Does AFP talk about health savings accounts? And then we're going to get to Mike Cook. In fact, Mike, let's go ahead and go to Mike, and we'll come back to the health savings accounts. So good morning, Mike.
Hi. Hello. Good morning.
Hey, thank you for joining me. Now, for our listeners, I've not met Mike, but there is that whole underworld culture online, and Mike is active in the Common Core battle. Thank you for what you're doing in Nevada.
My pleasure.
And so you guys had a rally yesterday?
Yes, we did.
Where? Tell us just a little bit about it.
We were at an elementary school, one of the original Common Core implemented schools here, handing out flyers and talking to people and raising awareness, doing the best we could. There was a really good response. A lot of people were very receptive. A lot of people had already known about it, which surprised me. And I think that the ground swelling is coming pretty good here.
I think you're right. When we first started talking about this, no one had even heard what it was. And I'm throughout the state weekly, but when I talk to people and I ask in the beginning, has anyone heard about it? I'm becoming surprised, and less surprised, I guess. The more people are learning about it, and the more they learn about it, the more they dislike it. And so, did you have speakers at your rally, or was it just your local folks?
No, there was just a few of us there, probably 10. Some of us had our kids with us. And we were just handing out flyers we couldn't go on the school grounds and hand out flyers. For some reason, even though it's a public school, they wouldn't let us hand out flyers. We weren't soliciting, but we weren't selling anything, but they wouldn't let us on school grounds. So we had to stay off the school grounds, hand out flyers to the parents that were walking to pick up their kids. The parking situation there is a mess, so a lot of cars were trapped out on the street for a while. So we would just go up to the cars and hand them flyers that were on the streets. And a lot of people would, as they're driving their car, they would stop and talk to us about it. It was really effective, and people were very receptive to it. Like I said, I was very surprised, and I'm still wondering why they wouldn't let us on school property. But that's for another time. We'll play their rules for a little while here.
And actually, that's going to be our show next week. Joining me next week is Ann Gassel, if I'm saying her name correct, Gassel. She is with the Missouri Education Watchdog site, and we're going to be talking about all of those parents, taxpayers, citizens who have been silenced or faced adverse reaction for speaking about the Common Core and the concerns of the Common Core. So if you're listening, or if you've got friends online, or you want to make a post on your Stop Common Core page out there, we want to hear next week from those people, whether it's the man who was carted out and arrested because he simply asked a question in one of the meetings, or whether it's the parents. This one cracks me up. I'm sorry, it's not funny. But parents on Facebook were talking about Common Core, and the teacher sent a letter home and scolded them.
Yeah, I'm surprised that the teacher knew what Common Core was. There are a lot of teachers that aren't informed on what's going on either.
Right. And
listen, I speak to a lot of teachers. I'm in my school every week. I volunteer every week. I know a lot of teachers outside of work or anything else, and to a person, if you get them alone off the record, they hate it.
Yeah.
Every single one of them. Nobody has said that this is good. Not one.
You're absolutely right, and I have the book with me, Trojan Horse, A Common Core, A Trojan Horse for Education by Orlean Corley. And by the way, our listeners get a special deal on that. If you want to order that book, I've got to get the website now that I said that. It's ARC Publishing, but you can go on that website and they will give you a special price on that book for listening to this show. But in that book, she warns us that those teachers who either have other materials that are not Common Core aligned, or if they don't go with the program, they face punishment and even termination. So we've already had examples of this, and I'm not supposed to say Agenda 21. I'm not supposed to say it sounds like a regime out of Germany. I'm not supposed to say any of those things. But it doesn't sound like freedom-loving America and the exchange of individuality, liberty, and free ideas, does it?
They all know that they're turning into cookie cutters. All the teachers, they all know it. They're very resentful of it, and they have not, to me, once said there is one good thing about this. I watch the train wreck happen in slow motion every week that I volunteer. It's breaking my heart. We went and we talked to the superintendent at a supposed public forum at a high school a few weeks ago. He couldn't get out of there fast enough. I mean, there's people in this group that will forget more than I'll ever know about this. And they tested him and the school board, and they all panicked. They couldn't shut us up fast enough. But there's some awesome people that are in this that will not shut up. And I'm right there with them. Their knowledge of it is way better than mine. But they will not shut up. They will not sit down. They will not be told what to do. And it's really inspiring. And I'm glad to be a part of it. And I'm glad you are too.
Now, are you being told that your school will either be able to opt out or that you can choose the curriculum? Are you being told any of those things?
My principal, she will not really talk to me about it. She's new this year and new as a principal, but she is rah-rah Common Core. And whenever I try to talk to her about it, she kind of skirts me and doesn't really want to talk about it. So again, I'll play along for a little bit here, but until we can get some numbers up and get everything going, then I'll get to her about that. So no, to answer your question, I haven't heard anything about it.
And are you familiar with the reading list, the exemplar text reading list on the EAL portion of Common Core?
I might be.
Okay.
Like I said, I read a lot, but I don't retain a whole lot of what's going on about this.
Well, here in Iowa, we've got some questions on that list because there are some books that are vulgar. They're not just sexually explicit, they're violent. And the relation...
I saw the Bluest Eye was
there
one
you
of
go.
them.
Bluest Eye and the Dreaming Cuban, I think, is the other one, and the Black Swan, which I've not researched that one. But we keep exchanging communication with the Department of Education and asking why these are on here. There's absolutely no positive benefit whatsoever to these books being on the list. And we're told that if we take the list off, we'll lose a lot of good books. And here's my question. Why can't you take the 3 off? I can't seem to get an answer. Why can't we just, if we have full freedom of our curriculum, like we're being told, why can't we take those 3 off? If we're not using Common Core in Iowa, we're using the Iowa Core, why can't we make up our own list? So these are the questions people have to be asking, because our governor, and we applaud him for it, wrote a proclamation stepping away from Common Core, and we were thrilled. But let's not have the dangers of it, the residue, still impacting and affecting or infecting our children. So, Mike, thank you so much for what you're doing in Nevada. If people want to find you, how can they find you on your Facebook page?
Facebook, yeah, Nevada-led, parent-led Common Core reform or something like that. I can't.
If you don't know, I don't know.
It's a long name. Nevadans Against Common Core, something like that.
If they just do a search, they'll find you. Okay.
Yeah, we're there, and I'm sorry. Like I said, there's a lot of people out there who know way more about this, but I'm right there with them, and I won't stop.
Well, Mike,
thank you very much for your attention as well.
You're welcome, and that's the beauty of it, is you don't have to be an expert. That's so often why parents sit back and don't get involved. And so let me just explain to you, please don't think you have to be an expert. The experts have gotten us in the fine mess we're in, okay? You're the parent that God created for your children, and God's given you a gut instinct, and you may not be able to say A, B, C, this is what's wrong with it, but if your gut is telling you, if you know something's wrong with it, it is your responsibility, obligation, and authority to step up and say something. You will be accountable. So absolutely come forward. You don't have to be an expert, but if you and you can learn more. There's so much information out there. It's great and easy to do searches and learn, and we can give you websites that are good, solid information, whether it's the Pioneer Institute, the Heartland Institute, Joy Pullman, Dr. Sandra Stolsky. There's so many good folks. AFP has good information on it. Heritage Foundation, Concerned Women for America, David Barton, Glenn Beck, Michelle Molken. We can get you the information. And my thanks to Barton, Beck, and Molken.
Let me just give you one. I got one email address here to give to you. 210.commoncore@yahoo.com. And those are all words. They're not numbers. 210.commoncore@yahoo.com. And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for what you're doing, Mike. I appreciate it. And like he said, just a small group of them had a great impact yesterday. Imagine what you could do if you started showing up at your child's playground, or maybe you have to stand on the sidewalk off the public property that you pay for with your taxes. But it's time to speak out. It's absolutely time to speak out. No matter what you're promised, you have to make sure that it's principled when your kids are involved. Travis Cagley is on the phone. Travis was at a meeting I was at last week, and I want to bring up a couple of things about that meeting. Travis, thank you for calling in.
No problem. No problem. Thank you for having me.
And so, one, thank you for coming to the meeting, giving up time on Saturday. I think we held that one to 2 hours, and still it was like we didn't get through half the stuff. And my husband's like, Tamara, these people are giving you 2 hours. It's amazing that people care. And we'll sit through that presentation, but there are so many fingers to Common Core. And we were talking about trying to take it through the 5 C's or the 7 C's, but there are so many fingers, and it's so involved in so many areas. But after that meeting, you had something happen. Tell our listeners and viewers what that was.
No problem. No problem. It actually took place over 2 days. It was actually Monday and Tuesday of this week. My daughter is in the K-12 program here in the state of Iowa. And for those people that don't know what the K-12 program is, it is a state-based homeschool system that is available to parents.
Online. It's online, right? Right.
Correct.
And just for the disclaimer, K-12 is under investigation. Now I'm not going to remember which states it was. Maine. They were influential in the governor's education plan in a way that profited them as a company. And I'll see if I can find my information on that while you go ahead and talk.
Okay, no problem. So basically what happened is Emma has a resource teacher, and Emma's my daughter. And basically what happened, on Monday, she was given an article to read. It was, "Why should America get rid of the penny?" And, you know...
And how old is your daughter?
My daughter's 10 years old. Okay. So, you know, she's reading the article, and she's thinking to herself, and I had a long conversation with her that night, and she's like, "I don't believe this. Why am I having to read this?" Okay, I understand that to a certain point, but the next day when you put another article up on why America should get rid of the penny, and talking to the student about being a good global steward in, you know, saving resources and saving money for the government and stuff like that. Okay, maybe I can understand that to a certain point. But at the very end of the conversation, when you push your political views or political agenda onto a student, that's just not right. I mean, literally what was put onto my daughter is, President Obama has called for a major change. Don't you agree? My daughter said no. But to be asked that 4 times in a row and then have the teacher at the end say, "Okay, well, I guess I can accept your opinion," it's just not right.
And again, your daughter's 10?
10 years old. And she had the courage to stand up and say no. And I applaud her for that.
Yeah, you've obviously done a good job, and I hope that you praised her for that afterwards. And these are what parents are dealing with in New York. We've seen the stories where they're being hammered. The assessment has really, really been, I think, apparently more exaggerated in New York. So many principals and administrators even wrote a letter about the failing of the testing. Students were showing anxiety, even nosebleeds, behavior issues, acting out because the assessments were, one, age inappropriate, too long, too difficult, but too much. And beyond the information they're trying to extract, and I use the word extract from these students, when you hear the sensors, whether it's your cushioned seat that has a sensor in it, your bracelet, your camera, whatever those sensors may be, and I don't even know if those were involved with these tests, but it was just too much. So for your 10-year-old to have to deal with this, as you say, 4 times from the teacher, how do you know this? Was someone listening?
My wife was right there. My wife is my daughter's learning coach in the online-based homeschool system. So she was sitting right there and heard everything.
Do you think you're going to face adverse reactions because you're going public with this?
I probably will, yes.
Will your daughter be impacted?
I am almost positive she will be.
can you find another school system or K-12 like program?
It'll take some definite prayer and everything there, and a definite leap of faith. But I'm sure I can pull together enough resources to look at the niche program.
Right.
I would love to get my daughter into a Christian-based homeschool system.
There are many homeschool programs, great homeschool groups in the counties. They're usually county-centered in Iowa. And without giving our listeners too much detail about where you live, I believe we can find you some really nice support for homeschooling. And there are great online programs. But what you're talking about, I'm hearing some of the Christian schools have taken in K-12. Not just,
they have.
And so this is a concern because I told you I would find it in this book, and I showed this to folks earlier, The Common Core, A Trojan Horse in Education Reform. And I'm just going to give you, the book can be ordered at smallhelmpressassociates.org, smallhelmpressassociates.org. And they say, I work with Scott or Mike Hartley, and if you'll tell him that you heard the show, Tamara, Scott Live, and Truth for Our Time, that you'll get a discount off this book. But and I can give you a phone number, folks, if you want to email later. You can email me at let's just have you email stopcommoncoreiowa@gmail, stopcommoncoreiowa@gmail, and I will get the phone number to you if that would be helpful as well. But in this book, Orlean, the author, says that the K-12 was under investigation in Florida for allegations that it used uncertified teachers and attempted to convince employees to conceal their substandard qualifications from the school district. Honestly, I have to tell you, that doesn't bother me. I think the whole certification thing is overrated. I think licensing is overrated. Yes, there are some areas where I think it's beneficial, and I know people are probably going to call in over this, which reminds me on the healthcare. When I'm talking about pre-existing conditions, I'm not talking about those things you couldn't help. I'm talking about those lifestyle behaviors that brought on a behavior, a health ailment. But so your teacher may not be certified. You and I both know that we've gone to hairdressers who were licensed and gotten really bad haircuts. It's not a guarantee that they're going to do it well, right, or they're qualified for the job. It just means that that's been their professional license, and it's more of a regulation on the industry and a taxation than anything else. So that one doesn't bother me so much. Tennessee, after its virtual academy students finished in the bottom 4% of the state testing, a shareholder filed a lawsuit, class action lawsuit, against K-12 Incorporated, alleging that it made false statements to the investors in an attempt to obscure poor student testing results. So that is an issue. That is an issue. And as we said earlier, the whole main issue where they had too much influence in that education policy. And that's what we're seeing with Common Core. It is a corruption of corporate cronyism. And yes, go ahead.
Sorry, not to interrupt you, but one more thing. With the K-12 program, the students not only have the normal curriculum that they have to do, but they have the Common Core curriculum that they're supposed to do as well. But here's the problem. They didn't send the books for the Common Core. How is a student supposed to complete the entire lesson plan?
Well, let me ask you, how do you have books for the Common Core? Because what we keep hearing from our elected officials who are promoting this is there is no curriculum. You can choose your own curriculum. Schools can opt out. I just had a conversation with an elected official who I will not name because I'm not trying to nail people. But this individual told me, they can opt out. You can choose your curriculum. So now you're saying they're not sending you the curriculum. How could there be any?
Correct.
So we know Pearson Publishing is already getting a jump on creating the curriculum. We know that when you teach to a test and schools are punished or rewarded, teachers are paid or not paid, given promotion or not, by the results of that test, that you're going to start teaching to that test, and somebody's going to develop a curriculum for that test. So are you saying they have books that are aligned with Common Core?
I couldn't tell you if they do or not. All I know is when we log into the K-12 platform and look at the daily lesson plan, there is a lesson plan for the normal curriculum, and there is a Common Core curriculum that gives assignments and pages that they are supposed to complete. There's no books.
Is it because you're supposed to do the work online? Because much of Common Core is technical, which is also going to be the cost beyond.
It's online.
Pardon?
There is no ebook for it because they provide the hyperlinks right in the K-12 program. If it's an online book that you're supposed to use, there's a hyperlink taking you to that book, and that's not provided.
Kind of hampers your learning there, doesn't it, Travis? So again, you know, I try not to do this, but we had Obamacare, and the launch was miserable. But we now have Obamacare, and the launch is miserable.
What's next?
Yeah, let's not go there. So what we have to do, and you and I can talk offline, but we need to hook you up with some homeschooling help, some people who can help you find the right program. And I don't want to ask any questions on air, but if your child is in an individual education plan or for a special learning student, we know it's quite difficult to get them out of the public school's grasp on those, but we can do it, I think. And so I'm not that expert, but we'll find somebody who can help you with that. And I thank you for bringing this story to us. And I want to follow this along as well. You were in that meeting last week, and we had one individual there, and this is common wherever we're at. Somebody wants to support Common Core. They like it. They've either been in the education field. They want to support it.
Correct.
And this individual wanted to support it. And did you notice he told us how he fell through the cracks, was almost expelled because he didn't fit what they expected in their testing and their lesson plans. And yet he's pushing a program who will be exactly what caused him almost failure. But this program will be on steroids. There'll be no other option.
Well, and Tamara, I think one of the things that's really important for people to understand on Common Core, and again, I'm certainly not an expert. But one thing, if you just look back, to 1980, really in American education, the mantra for education reform every time there's been a new wave has been increasing student standards, testing standards, different things like that. And every time we see that there's no increase. And so, again, the individual you're talking about, that was the problem with him. You continue to increase standards. Well, if you're already failing the existing standards.
And he did well in the test, but he didn't do well in the classroom.
Right. And so whatever the issue is, we understand that different students learn differently. And so you have to create an environment, again, market forces, where people find the materials and find the approach that they need. And instead, we're setting up a cookie cutter system. We're setting up very rigid education plans, very rigid courses for individuals to follow. And we are, the party of diversity is eliminating all diversity in the way that we learn and grow and develop as children. All of that is eliminated to fit us into a mold.
Any competition or creative ideas will not be allowed.
Yeah, and so people hear about whether it's K-12 or any of the other numerous ed reform packages out there. I think it's great that the marketplace offers a lot of opportunities. The other thing that we have to be very quick to say is that the market eliminates bad choices from the market, and so it's good to have parents engaged and seeing what this is. And I think that's the other thing that we have to make sure we're doing is we're getting information about where are the shortcomings on this stuff as well. If it's failing in its infancy at such an abysmal level, what makes us think that it's going to work 5 years from now, and the very beginning of that. We see that in a number of big government programs, and that's what this is simply another big government approach to ed reform.
Absolutely. It's a federal takeover of the local classroom, and you will
Tamara,
lose. Yes.
I've got one more comment, and then I apologize. I actually have to get going. But with the government programs and stuff like that, what do we see when they come in? You attack the messenger to dilute the true meaning of the message that's going out.
You're absolutely right, and I'm being that messenger on several of them. It's getting really old, and I'm getting really bruised up, but I keep coming back for more. And one more thing on the same person who was so pro Common Core, had no problem with the 400 points of data, had no problem with the intrusive harvesting of information, private information, possible selling that, had no problem. And yet when we all left, we had asked them to give us our name, their address, their email. Didn't give it. Didn't give it. So, Mr., I have no problem with that. Couldn't comply with a simple email address. So, and this is the hypocrisy of those who push this type of a mandate. Same thing we see in Obamacare. The Congress pushes it, but they don't expect to go on it. We've got to put it into it, and the time is now. We've got to go to a break right now. We won't put it into it, but we will go to a break. We'll be right back in 2 minutes. I am Tamara Scott with Truth for Our Time, Tamara Scott Live. And if you want to contact us, you can contact us. You can contact me at truthforourtime@gmail. You can use the stop Common Core Iowa at Gmail. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you know, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me. But is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
And thanks for joining with us. Thanks for staying tuned. I keep forgetting to look at the chat line, but I try during my breaks. And we have somebody on there talking to us, Drew, about the health savings accounts. Do you think those are a good idea? Does AFP have a position on that? I like the health savings accounts. I like education savings accounts. I think the education bill that the Iowa House put forward last spring would have been less costly. And parents would have had more freedom, more control over their children, and Common Core wouldn't have been so much of an issue. It's still an issue because the entrance exams will be geared toward the Common Core aligned curriculum. And folks, you've heard from two different dads out there today, and the one, supposedly there's no curriculum, but we're getting curriculum with it, and you'll be able to choose your curriculum, but we're already hearing that we can't, and he doesn't even get to see it. And what he is learning, he doesn't like. And I think it's going to be a lot like Obamacare. Oh, gee, we promised you could keep your plan, you keep your doctor, but guess not. But hey, now you can pay extra money because we're doing it our way. Drew, health savings accounts?
Yeah, well, I think I think in kind of from AFP's perspective, it's not necessarily oh, absolutely this is the future of healthcare, but it is a great option for a number of people. I think if we go back, I think people started talking a lot about health savings accounts after Ben Carson's presentation and short speech at the National Prayer Breakfast, when he essentially talked about, hey, this is a reform that could actually work for all of Americans and still allow them the choices and the individual needs and all of those things. Health savings accounts probably aren't going to work for everybody. However, they're going to work for a lot of people, especially if you do it. If you set up that health savings account at birth and keep it throughout your entire life. And the great thing about that is we know that, just kind of across the board that the majority of your healthcare costs are going to come at the end of your life. Well, the great thing about a health savings account is now you've been saving your entire life, for what's going to be a very costly experience later in life. And so I think that there's a lot of value to those things. In my mind, one of the best values of a health savings account is that you leave responsibility for an individual's health with that individual. And so now you have a pool of money that is, we know statistically and through social sciences and so forth, that if somebody has an account with their name on it, they view that as their money. That's a good thing. And so you have this pool of money with their name on it. They believe this is their money, and people are always more conservative in spending their own money. It's just a fact of life.
It happens to be true.
And so, I mean, if Tamara hands me a $100 bill, I'm probably going to be a little bit less conservative than if I had to go out and actually earn those, that $100 in how I spend it. And when that comes to making decisions about your health or making life decisions that will impact your health, people are going to start thinking about those things a little bit more when they're actually going to be spending their money on the consequences of those decisions. And I think that's one of the best values of a health savings account. Again, it's not going to work for everybody, but it is a great option that exists in the marketplace of healthcare options.
And the other thing that our chatter wanted us to talk about was you can't tell what's in your plan, what it covers, until you've already bought it. That is just so ludicrous. And that's what we're finding out with Common Core as well. And I do have a quote. I wanted to ask you about the SNAP program. We've never even gotten to it, Drew. I apologize. I was going to talk to you about economic issues because AFP is so good on the economic issues. We didn't even get to them. This is from somebody on Facebook. Remember the phrase Nancy Pelosi uttered about Obamacare? We have to pass it to find out what's in it. A physician called into a radio talk show and said the definition of a stool sample is exactly that. We have to pass it to find out what's in it. So forgive me, that's probably not very classy, but you got to have a little humor when things are falling down all around you. We have just a couple minutes left. The SNAP program, food stamps. You're talking about earning things. Jimmy Kimmel, I don't watch the show, but I saw the clip on one of the other talk shows. He had parents, which I think is horribly cruel. I think the whole thing was rotten. But he had parents say to their children, "I ate all your candy," after Halloween. And it showed these kids crying and upset. It was just the meanest thing to watch. And I don't think it's healthy for kids, and I didn't like parents who were earning enough to do it. But one of these kids said, "I worked for 2 hours getting that candy." And that's the difference. You and I both know, everybody knows, once you work for it, you earn it. You're not so eager just to give it away, blow it, have it wasted.
Yep. Well, and I think, and you make better decisions in how you spend those resources, not just the speed at which you go through them, but actually the quality of decisions you're making as well. There was and I'm going to miss out on his name, but he was a former congressman from Ohio, Bob McEwen.
Bob McEwen,
yeah.
Politics easy as pie.
Yeah, he makes a very simple presentation on primary, secondary, and tertiary purchases. A primary purchase is when you spend your money on something you're going to consume. You care both about the price and the quality of the product. A secondary, you're spending your money on something you're not going to use.
For someone else?
Yep, or you're spending somebody else's money on something you're going to use. Now, you either care about price or you care about quality, but you certainly don't care about both.
Yep.
And then a tertiary which is what the government is always engaged in, is they're spending somebody else's money on a product that they're not going to consume. And so we see price goes through the roof and quality goes through the floor.
Absolutely.
And that's what we see going on. Well, with food stamps, it doesn't necessarily fit that to a T, but we do have an issue where the left and advocates for big government are capitalizing on really what is a vicious cycle. We have a poor economy, which leads to poverty, and poverty has become an excuse to expand government. Well, the expansion of governments is what is causing our economic woes in this country. And so we continue to circle the drain. The bigger government gets, the worse the economy becomes, the more poverty
and the more sucking down that drain.
and the closer you get to the drain, the stronger that pull is. And so, there are families that are probably in need and would benefit from some short-term, very direct with some tight constraints on it, because again, if you're going to live off of somebody else's money, there ought to be some very tight strings attached to that.
Yep.
But what we've seen instead is that since the year 2000, again, that's a Republican president and a Democratic president, we've seen food stamp spending quadruple. Since 2008, we know that food stamp spending has doubled. We're at a point now in our country where 1 in 7 individuals in this country are dependent on some form of food assistance, and that is a moral crisis in this country.
Especially in this country and in this state where we feed the nation. And I think we ought to put an emphasis on that and do what we can to promote that rather than all the things Iowa may not be that our politicians sometimes want to make us. So they've cut the food stamps. According to Liberty, personalliberty.com, they've cut the food stamps $2.75 per month down to $2.39. And I'm sorry for any hardship, but this needs to come out of the private, the charitable, the churches, the Christians as individuals. This is a tithe issue, not a tax issue. And they're cutting it, and that's unfortunate, but the rest of us have been cutting it for a long while. It drives me crazy when I drive my 98 Tahoe into the parking lot and see people who are, I don't know how they're affording it, but they're driving brand new Escalades. And I just shake my head and go, what am I doing wrong? So we are out of time. We're not out of town. We were out of town last week, and my thanks to Ryan for making that work for us out of the hotel room in Las Vegas. Thank you so much, Ryan. Next week, if you've got stories on adverse reactions because you've spoken out about Common Core, we want to hear from you. You can get a hold of me at stopcommoncoreiowa@gmail.com or truthforourtime@gmail.com. I am Tamara Scott. Got to run. Remember, if God expects you to live through it, He's directed you how to do it. In His Word, be encouraged and never be complacent.